Nakormik. There are, I believe, two fellow Inuit, one being my brother, Senator Watt, who is in the audience, which is nice to have family member here today as well, and his wife, Ida. Both very special people to me. So thank you, and thank you very much for this remarkable event that I have been invited to, and I want to thank certainly the Honorable Michael Ignatieff for this invitation for me to come and speak to you today. It's a real pleasure, and I know that there are many familiar faces in the room, which, again, I am very pleased to see. I have worked with for many, many years around the globe, in fact, not just in our own country of Canada. So thank you for all of this. Now, we have been very encouraged, of course, by the organizers of the conference, to speak candidly. And just for the record, I left elected politics within our own world, the Inuit world, about 4 years ago for various reasons. But after spending 11 years basically living on an airplane, I decided to kind of take a step back and do some independent work, and now I speak independently. And so it gives me the opportunity to be even perhaps more candid today with my remarks on the issues that are very important, not only to the Arctic, but certainly to us as a nation, and how we play our role in the global community. So in that vein, as we're talking about 150 years, as we turn 150 as a nation, in that vein, I say we have much to do and a long way to go before 2017, there can be no doubt. But what I will focus today on is where, from an Arctic perspective, we should head as a nation in terms of the global environment, certainly, economic development, and our foreign policy. And to me, these three areas are completely connected. There is no disconnect between these three areas. And I am very big on trying to talk about the issues of connectivity, and certainly today is going to be the case. I usually have some wonderful slides of Arctic scenes and human faces as well, but unfortunately, with the travel that I do, I must have left it in another bag. So I usually like to have those, because for those, and I can't assume that many of you have been in the Arctic, because I suspect not a lot have, but once you've seen some of these pictures, I always find that people get very enticed to and engaged about these northern issues and want to come north. But unfortunately, you only have me today to look at. As you know, the Arctic is going through unprecedented international interest as a result of its vast mineral and hydrocarbon resources, and of course the fishing grounds, and its potential international shipping routes linking Asia, North America, and Europe. And this increased attention compounds the challenges that we're certainly facing as Inuit in the Arctic, because we have already been the recipients of some of the most dramatic impacts of globalization. For those of you who are not too aware of what's been happening in the Arctic, we have been, so to speak, poisoned from afar. We knew in the 1980s what was happening here, where persistent organic pollutants, heavy metals, and many other contaminants carried to the north by the winds in the oceans ended up in the oceans, in the Arctic sink, and certainly accumulated in our food web, and particularly in our marine mammals, which we hunt and what we eat. And now, of course, we know that climate change caused by greenhouse gases has left virtually no feature of our landscape and our icescape or our way of life untouched. But we're not. We're a proud, dignified, strong people, so we're not powerless over these issues. We're not trying to be powerless victims over these changes. By working closely with Inuit, the government of Canada certainly took international leadership in the 1990s on the contaminants issue, and I worked very closely with Minister Anderson at the time. And during that time, as president of the Inuit Circumpolar Council, I was very honored to serve as a spokesperson for the many northern Indigenous peoples, and we advocated for the Convention on Persistent Organic Pollutants, which was eventually signed in Stockholm, Sweden in 2001. And we, in very close cooperation with our national delegation, we were very included in throughout that whole process, we put the human face of the issue front and center, and using, of course, our very deep familiarity with the problem and the unique voice that we have, we helped to focus this process. Now, together, all of us Inuit organizations, as well as other Aboriginal peoples and the Government of Canada, using the results of Canadian science, in fact, moved the world to action. And so the role of Northern peoples in Canada's foreign policy did not end in Stockholm. We are, as you know, as a result of the remarkable work that Lloyd Axworthy did in terms of helping to create the Arctic Council, along with our own Inuit ambassador at the time, Mary Simon. We are permanent participants still today to this 8-nation Arctic Council, and this is a very unique arrangement. And we sit at the same table as ministers of foreign affairs and intervene in the same manner as states, although we don't have voting rights. But it works, but there's a lot more to do in terms of strengthening the Council, in terms of the role that we could play even more importantly. As well, we certainly have joined Canadian delegations to a number of United Nations treaty processes, including the Convention on Biological Diversity, and now, more recently, we are very engaged in the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Now, there was a time, there was a lot more access. I worked, as I said, very closely with Minister Anderson. I've worked very closely with Minister Dion when he was Environment Minister. And there was a time there was a lot more access, and there was a time where Aboriginal leadership, there was a lot more inclusivity in all of this. Because I have to remind you that the Cabinet Committee on Aboriginal Peoples and the Privy Council Office Secretariat that served it were disbanded in 2006, as was the Office of the Arctic Ambassador. And it was as a result of those efforts of not only Lloyd Axworthy, but Bill Graham at the time, that a northern dimension of Canada's foreign policy was adopted in 2000. So I do definitely recommend a future Liberal government recommit to engage and draw upon the wisdom and the insight of Northern peoples as one means of regaining international leadership.